One of the things that we need to remember about that stage of the war was the tremendous technological difference between these experimental planes, these new mysterious machines, some disc-shaped, some flying wings, and all kinds of experiments. This, I think, is where they got ahead of us. They were prepared under that central leadership where Hitler said he wanted something, and by thunder, they did it.
Was this some kind of UFO they were trying to build?
What I can say, and what can be verified, and what is substantiated by the documents that I have found, is that they did work on an exotic propulsion system, linking gravity with quantum physics, for example. And for this can be proven.
So the Nazis were trying to develop anti-gravity propulsion. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, it is. To this day, it is the most likely hypothesis. Over here, I will show you some of the German equipment left by the Germans here.
Oh, okay.
In the vicinity of this underground facility. You can see helmets, gas masks, anti-tank grenade launcher. Yes, it's all rusty stuff, but...
So this was all equipment that was abandoned when they left the
yes,
facility?
they have left here quite a lot of it.
It's amazing.
This is a barrel from a machine gun,
yeah,
MG-34.
Gel casings here?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
88 millimeters.
Yeah, was that from a tank, or would that have been a...
From a tank, or anti-aircraft gun.
Right. Gas masks?
Gas masks, yes.
It's quite clear that the Germans were terrified that the Allies would discover what they were doing down here.
Yes, they were guarding this secret very, very carefully, and one of the evidence for this is that the number of the counterintelligence officers here was record-breaking, around 100 of them, which was unusual because normally it would be 1 or 2 or 3 officers. And the other evidence for this is that for the secrecy is that none of the prisoners that were working in the finished parts of the complex have survived, which means that they didn't hesitate to kill thousands of people in order to keep this secret being a secret.
It's hard to describe the feeling when you walk around this underground base, but a general sense of dread would probably come closest. It's cold, damp, and you can feel the fear and hatred inside the vast tunnels and chambers. Not surprising, really, when you realize that over 40,000 people died down here. Take it from me, this is a truly disturbing place. If the Nazis did actually build flying saucers, then an Austrian scientist called Victor Schauberger was probably one of the leading lights behind it. In 1934, it's reported that Schauberger and other scientists were summoned to Berlin to meet Hitler and start work on an exotic flying craft. Their work had unlimited funding and would be carried out in total secrecy. After the war, documents discovered by Allied intelligence show that the scientists did, in fact, have some success.
Victor Schauberger is a Nazi technologist who had this motto of observe and copy nature. He came up with the first, what was called the repulsion craft, the first craft that had the ability to have completely vertical liftoff. So he succeeded in this basic tabletop design of vertical liftoff, and instantly the Nazis got right behind him.
Once Hitler knew that on a small scale such a machine had been able to defy gravity as he was thinking of it. Then all the resources went in so that Schauerberger could make one that was big enough to take men, to take bombs, to take anything that the Führer wanted.
It seems very likely to me that the Germans were trying to evolve a craft that was capable of vertical takeoff. I mean, that was kind of like the holy grail of aviation during the war. As the war went on, this would become even more important, of course, because more and more runways on aerodromes were being bombed, and it would be much better to support ground troops if you could have vertical takeoff aircraft.
It's fair to say that the Allies strongly suspected, and maybe even had hard evidence, of a top-secret development program that explained the multiple sightings of unidentified craft in the skies. So when the Nazi regime finally fell in 1945, the Russians and the Americans were very keen to get their hands on the data, the documents, and the scientists behind it. The Americans set up a top-secret operation to bring as many Nazi scientists to the US as possible. It was codenamed Paperclip.
Come the end of the war, there was an incredible competition, I mean, a frenzied competition to gain access to the individuals who were the brains behind Germany's leading technological elite. So Russia wanted them, everybody wanted them, and ironically, the US, one of the Allied forces, was victorious in obtaining them.
They extracted Werner von Braun, who became a chief scientist at NASA, developed the Saturn V rocket, and this is the man that developed rockets that bombed London initially. So it was a race. It wasn't just a race to capture Berlin, it was a race to get technology.
At the end of the war, the Allies seized something like more than 2 million of patents from the German industry. These patents were given for free to the private industries in Germany, in France, in the UK, and of course in Russia. And it was a fantastic booty.
In fact, there were both Russian and American flying saucer projects that were developed after the war. The Russian project was called Tarielka, and the American one was a joint effort with the Canadians called the Avro car.
In 1953, the international press came up with an astounding news. Canadians were working on a flying saucer. Actually, the Avro aviation company in Canada was funded by the Americans to develop a disc-shaped aircraft.
Both vehicles were modified, one for further static and flight testing at the Avro facility, and the other for tests in the 40 by 80-foot tunnel at Ames Research Center.
The Americans invested a lot of money, not so much, but a good amount of money. And the Canadians developed the disc pretty slowly, and a few years later they came up with a test craft. And there is some footage about that. You see something like an overcraft jumping over the ground, about 2 meters over the ground, with very, very poor performances. And after that, the Americans realized that the money was completely wasted, and so they canceled the project. But there is another story. Many think that that was a conspiracy, that Avro car was just a poor craft shown to the public to demonstrate that the project failed. But behind the scenes, there was another project successfully making a real flying saucer with top performances. But no one knows about that, of course.
The second facility Igor wanted to take me to was called Sobon, and unlike a Shuku, it was a base which had both above and below ground facilities, including what Igor thought could have been a huge stone test rig for a vertical liftoff craft, maybe even a man-made UFO codenamed Die Hannenbau.
Wow, look at this. What's this for?
I'm not sure what it was, but the closest analogy is to a circular test rig for objects taking off and landing vertically. This is general rule that one builds such a test rig for testing helicopters or drones taking off vertically. So it might have been for testing some flying object, because it doesn't fit any other explanation, in fact.
So let me just get this straight. So what, there would have been maybe some kind of flying object in here?
Inside.
That could have taken off vertically?
Perhaps. That's one of the explanations.
The base was run by the elite SS troops, who maintained the highest level of security. In fact, the entire valley that surrounded it was sealed off, with thousands of soldiers, roadblocks and gun emplacements. Historians have nicknamed it the Nazi Area 51.
So whatever it was that the Nazis were doing here, whatever experiments they were doing here, they wanted to make sure that no one got anywhere near it.
Not only that, but also, despite the fact that thousands of prisoners, they were, according to the German nomenclature, bearers of the secrets. So they had no right physically to leave this place anytime. If they came here, they were sentenced to remain here forever.
So they came here to work and they came here to die?
Exactly.
If the Nazis had developed an anti-gravity propulsion, what would the craft that would be propelled by this look like? Describe it to me.
The craft probably would have been circular and more or less flat, because that's the extrapolation of the geometry of the fields surrounding such a device. It could be a kind of a saucer-like, a disc-like, but it might have been a ball, for example. And this links this research project with the Foo Fighters, for example, which were certainly, we may say, because there is a lot of documents on it, we may say with absolute certainty that the Germans were producing, manufacturing strange flying machines, crafts, which were able to perform maneuvers which were impossible to perform for any conventional machines.
You say they were working underground. What's underneath us here?
We are over the center of the former mine, which was taken over by the SS. And it was a huge underground facility which they transformed into a war or research-related facility, codenamed Lothar. And it was so huge that the underground space here was the order of 20 million cubic meters. So it was something that has, again, has no equivalent anywhere in the world, as with the security.
So underneath where we're stood now was a giant science laboratory.
Giant science, but also industrial complex. Scientific and industrial complex, and there are reasons to believe, such as testimonies of the German prisoners of war, that the bell was tested here, and it was dedicated to the most secret research project carried out in the Third Reich during the entire war.
It would be very different from the traditional UFOs, largely because of the shape and because we're never quite certain whether it was intended to project something else, or, in other words, was it a launching device with all that mysterious power inside it, or was it itself capable of flying and delivering heaven knows what toxic compounds on the enemy?
Needless to say, the Allies took the whole Nazi UFO phenomena very seriously indeed. The Foo Fighters might just be harmless lights in the sky buzzing aircraft. But if the Nazis had developed some exotic hypersonic craft which could evade not only aircraft but also radar, then it might have been possible for these craft to deliver a crushing payload to destroy London or even New York and Washington, D.C. As darkness fell, Igor took me into the tunnels beneath the base.
The tunnels through here, right?
Yes, this is the entrance to the network of tunnels above the former mine, code-named Lothar. And I'm just going to show you the tunnels.
Look at this.
Yes, the door is original. It's all original here.
Wow.
This is actually a newly discovered part of the underground system.
Okay. Go through here?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is pretty much as it would have been, huh?
Yes. Yes. It's in perfect condition.
Yeah.
They have used very good materials here.
Yeah. And how long does this just go on for?
For many kilometers.
Really?
For many kilometers. For example, this tunnel which leads here, it stretches for 1.5 kilometers, and there is a rockfall at the end of it.
It's extraordinary. We go down here?
What is strange, it leads under the test rig, under the henge.
Right.
And what you can see here, these niches on the left, on the wall,
right,
are for high voltage cables, which were so powerful that one such a cable could power an entire small-sized city.
And why did they need so much power down here?
I'm just going to show you one of such a cables. You know, it's tremendous. It's very heavy, very heavy.
It's just a power cable.
Yes, and it's a sign that's telling us that what was going on underground had a purely industrial or research purpose, and that there was something very large down there. What they were doing here was something much larger, which incorporated all these facilities, research posts, and so on. It was code-named Sonderbauvorhaben S3, which means Special Constructional Undertaking S3. And it is written in the document that it was the most important such an undertaking of the SS during the entire war. They were planning to make a giant underground complex the size of a city, and probably it would be something serving the production and research of the strategic weapons of a completely new kind, something that would give them a victory in the war.
So you're saying this was the most significant secret project that the Nazis carried out during the war?
Yes, I also have a document which says that the project on which they worked was officially described, it wasn't a nickname, it was official reference in documents as something that will change the course of war, decisive for the war.
Just imagine if those hyper-fast German craft could have reached Moscow, could have reached London, could have reached New York. What would have happened? We were right on the brink of that delivery being made. It could have changed history.
Where does this take us?
This would take us under the center of the hinge of the test rig.
Right.
It goes just under the center and goes further to the power plant.
And so down here was where they would have carried out their experiments, huh?
On a deeper level, yes, but generally here. This is the same complex.
Right.
In the last stages of World War II, the Nazis developed a wealth of very, very advanced, even exotic projects in aviation and rocketry. There are hundreds of different blueprints for even very bizarre airplanes, and most of them were jet-propelled, and they were something completely different from the technology that the Allies had in their hands at that time.
By definition, a UFO means an unidentified flying object. But most people these days take a UFO to mean a flying saucer or an interstellar spacecraft of some sort. If we're talking about the real meaning of UFO, then clearly the Nazis, like the Allies, were indulging in that kind of behaviour.
I think the main thing they were after was a vertical takeoff craft, because obviously that meant you didn't need runways and things like that. But they were obviously looking for fighters. The size of the craft that they were experimenting with seems to indicate they were thinking in terms of fighters rather than bombers, because they couldn't actually carry lots of heavy bombs. But that's exactly what they needed at that stage. You know, they needed something that would be able to shoot down the Allied bombers that were completely obliterating Germany then. I think the Nazis were undoubtedly playing around with new technology at the time, propulsion technologies, and magnetic technologies as well. And I think what we've done is we've added the word UFO post, you know, and so it fits a nice picture of what we see today. But I don't think they were building what they thought as interstellar craft. These were new technologies at the time.
Blocked up?
Yes, that's as far as we can go. There is we can feel the current of the air, so it leads somewhere. We may be sure of that, but
and that's a shame, because whatever they were working on is further down behind this block
yes,
wall.
it's Lothar.
I think I can see a UFO down there.
So, did the Nazis really build UFOs, or was it clever cover for something else? The evidence seems to point to a highly classified flying craft with an exotic propulsion system. And when you consider the lengths that they went to hide their test facilities, it was obviously something of paramount importance. I'll see you next time.